Hello everyone, I am Vishal Salsekar and today we are going to cover the News Today articles for 20th of November. So in today's News Today discussion, we are going to cover 5 articles in detail. The first article is regarding the Tribunals Reforms Act of 2021. So recently Supreme Court has struck down certain provisions of this particular act and we are going to see what are those particular provisions and why those were struck down. The next is regarding the CRISPR-based gene therapy for the sickle cell disease. So we'll discuss regarding the CRISPR-based gene therapy. Along with that, we will also talk about the sickle cell disease, how that particular disease happens and what are the consequences of that. Then we are going to talk about the cryogenic engines and the LMV3 launch vehicle because there have been a lot of discussion that is already going on regarding the Gaganyaan mission, right? So in that particular case, we have to discuss regarding the importance of the cryogenic engine and specifically the LMV3 launch vehicle which will be utilized in order to carry the human into space. Next is regarding the Supreme Court directives on the organ transplantation. So we will see regarding what are the provisions with respect to the organ transplantation in India, what is the hierarchy of the structure that is pertaining to the organ transplantation, right? So all these things we are going to cover over here. The last in this is going to be regarding the global methane status report of 2025. So whenever these reports are there in the news, you should be having at least an idea regarding which are the agencies which are releasing. But when the reports are pertaining to the important issues, for example, here there will be the methane related aspect. So in those situations, if you are having certain data, then that will be added as a value addition in your answer. That's a certain important data that we are going to discuss as a part of this report that should be taken by you in your notes, right? So having discussed about that, then we will also discuss certain other quick updates as a part of the discussion, right? So let's start with the first article regarding the Supreme Court strikes down some provisions of the Tribunal Reforms Act of 2021. Now, from the perspective of the UPSC examination, we already know that the General Studies Paper 2 syllabus includes the polity and governance. So there, the topic with respect to this is the separation of power judicial review, because there is a judiciary and there is an executive. Both are the separate organs as far as we talk about the entire polity of India. In that case, if one organ is encroaching upon the functioning of the other organ, in that case, it is going to be the impact on the separation of power, and that will cause a lot of issues. That will also hamper to some extent the judicial independence, and that's why there were certain provisions of the Tribunals Reform Act of 2021 were struck down, right? Apart from that, tribunals and the quasi-judicial body, that is also important, be it the prelims or be it mains examination. These are important aspects to be discussed. Now, talking about what has been done recently. So in 2021, the government came up with the ordinance with respect to the tribunal reforms, and then later on that particular ordinance when was in question regarding certain provisions where the executive powers were overriding the tribunal's power. Executives were getting more power as far as the appointment and the different aspects of the tribunals are concerned. So the government came up with the Tribunal Reforms Act of 2021. And there are certain provisions as a part of the Tribunal Reforms Act of 2021 which are still encroaching upon the judicial functions and that are directly impacting the functioning of the tribunals. So that's why recently there has been certain provisions of this act were struck down by Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court struck down the certain provisions of the Tribunal Reforms Act of 2021. Now this Tribunal Reforms Act was reproduced from the Tribunal Reform Ordinance of 2021. That means previously it was ordinance and later on by the parliament it was passed in the form of an act of the parliament, right? But that particular provisions which were contentious over here in the ordinance format, certain provision with a tweaked form were also incorporated in the Tribunal Reforms Act of 2021, and that's why certain provisions have been declared as unconstitutional. And this is the case which has been heard, which is the Madras Bar Association case, where these particular provisions were held unconstitutional in nature. That means they were struck down now. Now, these provisions, as I've talked about, that the executive is one such litigant, right? Whenever the tribunal is functioning, there will be certain parties which are the litigant, but the other side of the litigation, there will be also government. In majority of the cases, it is the executive executive which is on the other side of the litigation. Now in that case, if the government or the executive is having a lot of power with respect to appointment, tenure and the service condition, don't you think so that is going to influence a lot of function as far as the tribunals are concerned? And that is going to be the conflict of interest and also infringing upon the separation of power, which is a prominent concept, right? So in all these cases, the appointment, tenure and the service condition related, whatever rules were there with respect to the Tribunal Reforms Act of 2021, those were struck down. Now why they were struck down? Because they were violating the principle of the separation of power, and also to some extent, if the executive is going too much into the judiciary wala domain, then obviously it is going to infringe upon the judicial independence, which is also one such part of the basic structure of the Indian Constitution, right? So that's why it is important. Now, executive, as I've talked about, ki majority of the cases, it is the executive which is the one such litigating party in the tribunals. That's why it is important. Now, talking about the key highlights, there are certain provisions which were struck down by the Supreme Court. So the first in this is regarding the minimum age of 50 years. So now Supreme Court has mentioned in this particular case that when we are talking specifically about the young talent, if you are keeping the criteria roughly, like for example, that 50 years ka criteria for the advocates and CA, and if you are keeping these criterias, then eventually in these cases you are excluding the young talent, and it is also not based upon certain exceptional aspects. It is basically an arbitrary criteria and also infringing upon the Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. That's why it is also had taken back or struck down. The next is regarding the 4-year tenure of the chairpersons and member. So the Supreme Court, what they have done, they have reinstated the 5-year tenure rule to ensure the security of their tenure and also the security and safety of their service, right? So in that cases, they should not be constantly worried about that if they are giving any specific adverse judgment. In these cases, there will be certain issues to their service condition. So that insurance will be provided as far as the Supreme Court judgment is concerned. Next is there are certain things which are reiterated again. So for example, here the Supreme Court has directed the center to set up the National Tribunals Commission within the 4 months. So what is the purpose of the National Tribunals Commission? So it will be a body that will be supervising it will be acting as an independent body. Apart from that, it is going to ensure the appointments, functioning of the tribunal. So all these things will be supervised by this particular body, which is the National Tribunals Commission. Apart from that, even the administrative and the infrastructural needs are also being taken care by this particular body. So these particular things have been done by the recent Supreme Court judgments, whether it is about the 50 years of each criteria that is struck down or removed, 25 years with respect to the experience criteria, then 4-year tenure, now it is reinstated as the 5-year tenure, then talking about the setting up of National Tribunals Commission within the 4 months. So these are the certain highlights with respect to this judgment. Now, talking about the tribunals, because when we are talking about tribunals, they are the quasi-judicial bodies. They are not exactly the judiciary, but to some extent they are also doing the functioning of the judiciary. And the purpose of creation of the tribunals was to reduce the dependence on the formal judicial mechanism. That's why to divert certain cases, there is a provision provided in the Constitution of India talking about the establishment of tribunals. So what are the specific articles with respect to that? So from the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976, there were 2 articles that were incorporated. Article 323A, which talks about the administrative tribunals and the service-related matter ke liye tribunal, and 323B, which talks about the tribunal for the other purposes that are there. Okay? So it is for the legislature to constitute tribunal for the other enumerated subjects, right? Now, talking about the purpose, we have already discussed to ensure the specialized, efficient adjudication and also the speedy resolution. So these are certain important aspects from the perspective of tribunal. Now, see, UPSC had previously asked certain questions. Judiciary ke context mein we have many a time discussed the articles, but now talking from the perspective of the tribunals, how far do you agree with the view that the tribunals curtail the jurisdiction of the ordinary courts? In the view of the above, discuss the constitutional validity and the competency of the tribunals in India. 2018 mein they had asked this question. Now, obviously, there will be certain things that you can incorporate, and also now after that, in 2022, there was reforms related act in the tribunal that was there, right? So the appreciation of that particular act, critical analysis, that can be also asked in the wake of the recent Supreme Court judgment. Next is regarding the India launches the first indigenous CRISPR-based gene therapy for the sickle cell disease, right? So from the syllabus perspective, since it is dealing with the health and the wellness related aspects, so and also along with that, it is talking about the certain things with respect to the governance. So governance and social justice, where the health sector policies, the government intervention, that is important because the government is also collaborating with the private partners in order to speed up and scale the manufacturing of these particular infrastructure. Talking about the GS paper 3 science and technology, because biotechnology, then the genetic engineering, this is also a very important topic from the perspective of GS paper 3. Now, talking about the gene therapy, what exactly is gene therapy? So, simply, in very simple words, the gene therapy is in order to treat certain genes. So, when you are going to alter that particular genes or the portion of that, in that case, you will need the therapy which will be the gene therapy. So, in that cases, the use of gene to treat and prevent and cure a disease or the medical disorder. So, whenever suppose karo, if there is a gene that or the portion of gene that is having certain type of disorder and that has to be replaced, then that process is being carried out with the help of the gene therapy. Now, it can be adding the new copy of the gene by replacing the issued genes, right? Apart from that, replacing the defective one or the missing gene, or apart from that, in that particular cases from the body which is having that defected genes, and that will be replaced with the healthier version. So this is the entire process of the gene therapy, where you are replacing the defected one and then you are replacing that with the healthier one. This is part of the gene therapy. Now, what has recently been done, that the government has launched the Birsa 101 gene therapy, which is dedicated to Bhagwan Birsa Munda in the wake of the 150th anniversary of Bhagwan Birsa Munda. This particular gene therapy was incorporated. Now, talking about it is developed by the CSIR and the Institute of the Genomics and the Integrative Biology. So, if there is any prelims based question that will be asked, so generally that who has made this particular entire genetic gene therapy, right? So it is developed by the CSIR and the IGIB. Then the Birsa 101, in this particular context, it was there in news what this particular Birsa 101 is, right? Apart from that, obviously, when we are talking about the gene therapy, we cannot do the discussion without discussing about the CRISPR. So the CRISPR stands for the clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeat. So it is basically a gene editing tool. Now see, I have discussed that in the gene therapy, if there is a defected genes, that particular gene first has to be removed and then it will be replaced by the healthier version, right? So in that cases, who is going to identify that what particular portion has to be removed? That selection, apart from that cutting through the molecular scissor and then replacing that with the healthier version. So it is done by the technologies like the CRISPR-Cas9. So it is a genome editing tool where what you are going to do, there will be a guided RNA. So this guided RNA is going to find out that which is the defected portion, and that particular part will be the targeted part that this tool is going to target. Now, after targeting that particular part of the gene, now what you have to do, you have to ensure cutting of that particular gene and replacing it with the new one. So there will be a need for the molecular scissor, right, or the protein. So there will be Cas9, which is CRISPR associated protein 9, which is a molecular scissor that will cut this strand of the DNA and that will replace the healthier one in that particular context, right? So this is a part of two things, which is guided RNA, which will be for the targeting purposes, and the Cas9, which is as the molecular scissor, right? So this is regarding CRISPR. Now, when it is in the context of specifically the sickle cell disease, so let's also briefly discuss about the sickle cell disease. So it is a genetic disorder. That means it passes through the generation. So it is an inheritable disease. If both the parents are facing this particular sickle cell disease, then that is going to be passed through, and there are very high chances that will be passed through the generations or the subsequent generations, right? So it is a genetic disorder that affects the hemoglobin. So whenever this particular disorder is persisting in the older generation, that will be passed through to the younger generations, and in that particular cases it is going to affect the hemoglobin, and that particular thing is going to carry the oxygen flow within the blood cells. So this hemoglobin is also going to get affected. Now what exactly happens in this sickle cell disease? So जो आपके red blood cells होते हैं, the red blood cells which are round in shape, that converts into the sickle shaped. So when these are going to get converted into the sickle shaped, along with that they also becomes rigid. Now when they are passing through the blood vessels, now that particular sickle cells are very hard, and that is going to cause a lot of pain. Along with that, there are chances that the blood can be blocked within that particular entire system, and then the blockage of the blood flow can be there. Now it has been observed that the tribal communities are more vulnerable to that, and that disease is more having incidence in the tribal communities. The idea is like 1 in the 86 birth among the scheduled tribes are having the sickle cell disease, and that's why this specific things have been incorporated specifically right now for the tribal population, right? Now, there is another term that we have to discuss, because in the prelims, generally the chances are high that they may give you certain words, and based upon that, you have to choose the appropriate answer. So, there is in FNCAS 9. So it is the enhanced FNCAS 9, which is basically a engineered high fidelity CRISPR-Cas9 platform, which is developed by the IGIB, right? So in that particular case, now, as I have talked about that already, government has mentioned that everything government can't do. So government has provided support in order to develop. Now there is a need to ensure the incorporation of the private industry in order to scale up that production, right? So that's why the CSIR and IGIB have done the MOU with the Serum Institute of India Private Limited in order to translate this in FN CS9 into a scalable, affordable therapies for the genetic disorder, right? So in this particular case, now you can observe that a lot of development is being done, and this is going to help specifically the targeted population, then in general, a large amount of population which might be susceptible to the diseases like this. Now talking about the PYQs, the biotechnology, it is a topic which is the broader aspect of the biotechnology. So in that cases, the research and development in the achievements applied biotechnology में क्या क्या है, and how these achievements will help to uplift the poor sections of society. So this is going to be helpful for answering the questions like this. This is one such achievement with respect to the biotechnology, जहाँ पर there is some kind of things which is available to do the gene therapy, जहाँ पर you can target and you can replace the defected gene and can be replaced by the newer or the fresh gene. Next is regarding the ISRO conducted the bootstrap mode start test for the CE-20 cryogenic engine under the vacuum conditions, right? So since this is something with respect to the space technology that is being done on the indigenous basis, so GS3 may science and tech, development application, science technology, indigenization of the technology along with the technology transfer, space-based indigenization, right? So from all these perspectives, it is a very important aspect. Now, what has been done? That for the first time, the bootstrap mode of starting the gas generator cycle cryogenic engine without the auxiliary startup system. Now, basically what happens in the whatever engines that are there in any specific craft, right? So whenever the engine has to be ignited, there will be a need for fuel, but along with that fuel, there will be a need for oxidizer, because in the space, there will be chances are less that you are going to get the gases, right? So in that cases, you will need the oxidizer. So there is a mechanism that need to be attached to all the engines, jahan par there will be or all the stages of the engine where there will be a need for the fuel along with the oxidizer. Now, in this case, what they have done, they have utilized the bootstrap mode of starting the gas generator cycle in the cryogenic engine. That means by the pressure of that particular setup itself, there will be self-ignition that will be provided by the entire setup. There will not be any need for attaching any auxiliary startup system, jahan par you have to attach some startup ignition system or the oxidizer have to be sent separately in order to ignite the cryogenic stage. Because in the outer space, you will need these particular processes. Maybe a chance, sometime you have to reduce the speed, sometime you have to increase the speed, sometime you have to take up the operations where the multiple satellites have to be dropped. And in all these cases, there should be this, like gaadi ka jaise hota hai na, self-start. Like this condition should be there where this can be triggered from the system itself, and that's why this is a very important thing from the perspective of the space science. Now, talking about this, it is going to enhance the restart capability and the mission flexibility for the future LVM-3 flights, right? So we are targeting that Gaganyaan is going to be launched through the LVM-3, right? So launch vehicle Mark 3 flights, right? And this is the heaviest engine that has been developed by ISRO, right? So in that particular cases, this will reduce additional setup in this LVM flight, or basically what you can do, you can reduce the weight of the entire engine, and now the payload capacity can be increased, because entire engine, let's say it is taking 4000 kg. Now additional setup, let's say some kg, let's say 100 kg has to be added in order to reignite it again. Now that 100 kg can be reduced and this much payload can be further increased. So this is going to be helpful for the future missions. Now, talking about the cryogenic engines. So, cryogenic engine, why they are known as cryogenic engine? Because the last stage generally in these particular cryogenic engines are the cryogenic stages, jahan par they are using the cryogenic technology, where the fuels are stored at very, very, very low temperature, like the temperature below minus 150 degrees Celsius. So generally the fuels utilized are the liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen that will be in the liquid stage at such low temperature, right? And this is going to be more efficient. That can be packed very, very closely, and this will be more efficient as compared to the solid as well as the liquid propellants, right? So liquid and solid propellants are comparatively less efficient and gives the small payload advantage. That's why for launching the heavier payload, you need the cryogenic stage. And that's why in the LVM-3, there is a need for utilization of the cryogenic stage. And that's why this has been incorporated. The cryogenic stage has been incorporated. Now, this is the further add-on that you will be self-ignite the stage. There will be availability of the bootstrap mode of starting, right? Now, talking about CE20, so it is the largest cryogenic engine which is using the liquid propulsion, which is being developed by the Liquid Propulsion System Center, Vallimala, Kerala, right? So this is regarding the CE20. Now, talking about the cryogenic engine, so this is the setup where there will be from one side it is the fuel, from the other side it is the oxidizer, because as I've told you that in the outer space you will not be getting the oxidization ke liye certain gases that is needed, like for example oxygen, and that's why that will be incorporated over here. Here will be for first pre-burner, and then eventually it will be the combustion chamber, jahan par the entire fuel burning takes place. Now, LVM-3, which is the LVM Mark 3. Previously it was GSLV Mk3. Now the name has been changed to LVM-3. It is the new heavy lift launch vehicle of ISRO. Roughly 4000 kg is the capacity in order to transfer the satellite into the GTO, which is the geosynchronous transfer orbit, from where it will be further moved to the geosynchronous orbit or the geostationary orbits, right? Now, 3 stages hai. First stage is solid, so yahan par 2 solid propellants that will be there. The second stage pe it is the liquid stage, so generally the liquids to engines jo hai, Vikas engine, which is being utilized right now, that is being utilized over here. So right now Godrej Enterprises has also provided the L110 stage Vikas engine. This is the liquid stage ke liye, right? For the Gaganyaan project. Now, final stage is CE25 cryogenic stage, which is powered by CE20 engine. So third stage is the cryogenic stage, and maximum thrust is going to be available from this, right? Or maximum efficiency. Now, talking about this, the previous year question. So there were already previous year means questions, certain questions we have discussed when there were articles regarding the human space flight. But now talking about this, it is regarding the India's satellite launch vehicle. Consider the following statement. 3 statements are being provided regarding the PSLV's utilization for launching certain satellites. Then satellite launch from PSLV remain permanently fixed and all. So this is basically an entire idea of the space related things. If you are aware of this, this is a very easy question for you. So try to answer this entire question and post the answer of this question, right? The next article is regarding the Supreme Court's direction to the center regarding framing of the uniform national policy regarding the organ transplantation, right? So when we are talking about the organ transplantation, obviously there will be certain science and tech wala aspect that will be incorporated, and also the governance related things that will be incorporated, governance and social justice, because the health and welfare will be part of that. Now, talking about the context, that recently Supreme Court has highlighted that there is a lack of coordination that is available. Ki bhai, there is no such set of uniform database that is available where how many donors are there and how many recipient or the beneficiaries are there. They are at the same platform so that we will be able to assess the demand and supply and if there is any mismatch in that. So that's why they have talked about that there is a need to ensure a solid database, which will be talking about that, which will be the giving an idea regarding the donor and the recipient of this, right? So now talking about the organ transplantation, तो जैसे हमने जीन थेरेपी में किया था, that in order to remove the defected ones or those which are with disorder with the some which are new and from the healthy ones, right? So in that cases, it will be removing the failing or the damaged organ that is replaced with the healthy organ from a donor. Now see, in the case of India, it is not available commercially. For example, you can't sell or purchase. It's done in the good faith, right? So it's not done like you can just purchase certain things, right? So in this case, it is the voluntary thing. Now, what are the Supreme Court's directive? First is regarding framing the uniform national policy. That means there should be a uniform policy across the states. There should be uniformity in this. There should not be discrimination based upon the state. There should not be discrimination based upon the caste. There should not be discrimination based upon the gender. So it should be available equally to all the citizens of India. So this is what first thing that Supreme Court has highlighted. Another thing that Supreme Court has highlighted, that despite being available of the national level body and certain state level bodies, there are still states available, for example, Manipur, Nagaland, Andaman and Nicobar, Lakshadweep, where the state organ and tissue transplant organization that is not available. Means state have not formed these respective bodies. And that's why Supreme Court has directed center that with the consent of the state, you go forward and form these particular bodies for the state so that this organ transplantation related process can go in a smooth manner, and in those states also there should be availability of the provisions. Talking about the live donors, because when they are giving or they are donating their organs, so in that cases there should be the welfare of those particular donor that has to also be taken into consideration. So the welfare of the live donors, apart from that ensuring the post donation case, apart from that preventing their commercialization, that should not be like a person has been made bound to give or donate certain organs. So इस तरीके से चीजें नहीं होना चाहिए. Lastly, talking about the amendment in the death registration forms. So in those cases generally क्या होता था कि if the person has not given consent, तो chances are less that the organs can be donated. But now with the consultation with the National Organ and Tissues Transplant Organization, they are trying to assess the feasibility that in the case of the deceased individual, can the family gives the consent for the organ donation. So this feasibility is being checked, right? So these are certain directives that the Supreme Court has provided recently. Now, talking about the organ transplants in India, so the first thing is the legal framework from where it is coming. So it is coming from the act, which is the Transplantation of the Human Organs and Tissues Act of 1994, where certain amendments that were being done in 2011. Now talking about, there is a structure where there is an organization which is at the national level, which is the National Level Organization, NOTTO, which is National Organ and Tissues Transplantation Organization, right? So this is at the national level, and we have also seen that at the state levels also, there are State Organ and Tissues Transplantation Organization. This is at the state level. Certain states might not have formed. That's why Supreme Court has directed center in order to take the cognizance in this regard. Now talking about this, what NOTTO performs, so it is doing the coordination and networking for the procurement and distribution of organ. That means managing the demand and supply and also ensuring that there should not be any commercialization. Now, there should be also awareness, because many people are not at all aware that there is such kind of provision that is also available. So in those cases, the National Organ Transplant Program, like these certain programs have been launched by government, the awareness generation campaigns that are being there in order to make people aware regarding these kind of good aspects, right? Now, organizing the efficient mechanism for the organ tissue procurement and retrieval, awareness generation programs, all these things are being part of these particular government programs. Now, the last article is regarding the global methane status report of 2025. Now, when we are talking about the methane gas, yes, it is a very much potent greenhouse gas. If we compare it with the carbon dioxide, roughly it is 28 times more potent than the carbon dioxide, though the lifespan is less, but still its potency is comparatively high. That's why it is important. And from the perspective of GS paper 3, environment and ecology, it is very, very important. Climate change, sustainable development, these type of reports gives you certain idea regarding how you can enrich your data with respect to the answers. Right. Now, talking about the context, so recently the United Nations Environment Program, along with the voluntary organization, which is the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, which is a group which is having the representation from the governments, representation from different non-governmental organization, international organization, right? So they have jointly produced this particular report, which is the Global Methane Status Report. Now, the purpose of this report is to highlight the progress regarding what we have achieved in terms of the methane gas emission. So it is to assess the global methane pledge, which was taken in 2021 on the sidelines of the Glasgow summit, right? So in that cases, what are the key highlights? The first important key highlight is regarding the methane's atmospheric concentration. So the report is highlighting that this has been doubled since the pre-industrial revolution level. So जो pre-industrial level था, वहाँ से it has already been doubled, and by 2020. And now there are very high chances that it is further going to get increased roughly till 2030. After that, there are chances कि वहाँ से decline होगा. But by 2030, it is further going to increase 5%. Now, right now, it is 352 million tons per year. Itna lagbhag emission hai. Now, talking about the impact of this particular emission, so the impact of the rising global emission, this is impacting in many ways. For example, in terms of the mortality, in terms of the productivity, right? So 24,000 additional premature death, that is because of the excessive methane emission, right? And 2.5 metric ton of the crop losses annually by 2030 with the reference of 2020. So this is also there. So there is mortality and the crop losses that is there. So first we have seen regarding the concentration doubling. Next we have talked about the premature deaths. Along with that, there are crop losses also. Lastly, when we talk specifically from the perspective of India, because this report also highlights that the methane is becoming a major concern for India. And when we are talking about stubble burning already, we are seeing the pollution related scenario. So in that cases, the methane is also one such contributory factor. So India is the world's third largest methane emitter after China and US. And in India, it is increasing like anything. So basically 30 million tons, 31 million tons per year, this is being the entire India ka jo per year methane ka emission hai, that is there. Right. So this is regarding the methane report. So now talking about the methane. So basically certain features of methane, or if there is any other gas that is there in news, that are important. So it is a colorless, odorless, tasteless type of gas, right? Apart from that, it is a major greenhouse gas. It is also a very much potent greenhouse gas, right? It is a powerful greenhouse gas, short-lived. That means the time period of its entire lifespan is comparatively lesser as compared to when we talk about the carbon dioxide. Warming potential, it is roughly 86 times stronger than that, but the lifespan is, and we are considering it for the 20 years period. But when we see the lifespan, it is 12 years. And for the carbon dioxide, it is hundreds of years. That's why when we talk about the potency, it is coming roughly 28 times around potency as compared to carbon dioxide. Lifespan is less, the potential is high. Now, who are emitting? Basically, when we talk about the sources, 60% comes from the human activity and roughly 40% comes from the agriculture. And in agriculture, specifically, the rice production is one such major contributor, because the standing crop, as far as the rice, when in the nursery, you have sown that particular crop, water is filled or logged in that entire region, that is one such major source of the methane emission. Now, talking about the initiative in order to tackle this particular emission. So, the first important, we can say, the initiative that was being taken and regarding which this report is prepared is the Global Methane Pledge, right? Now, this is a voluntary framework which is for reduction of roughly 30% from the 2020 level, right? By 2030. Right now, the target is ki bhai, not target, the chances are ki 5% increase hoga. But the Global Methane Pledge bolta hai ki roughly you have to reduce it by 30%. But right now, the chances are high that it is going to increase further 5%. But it is not signed by India. Now, talking about on the sidelines of COP26 Glasgow in 2021, the Climate and the Clean Air Coalition has launched this. Right. Now, International Methane Emission Observatory, which is managed by UNEP, which is basically a database regarding the methane, from where it is coming, what quantity it is coming, right? So all these data is being updated by UNEP in this. Now, talking about India, that what steps India have taken. India has taken at the national level multiple steps. First, we have understood that regarding the agriculture, we have to also do and ensure the sustainable agriculture. That's why the National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture has incorporated that, right? Apart from and in that also, see, over dependency on rice, then the variety of rice where the water logging has to be done. So all these things have been taken into consideration, even the variety change of rice, even direct sowing of rice, right? All these things are being taken into consideration in order to reduce the emission of methane. Talking about the technologies for reduction of methane from the rice production. So system for rice intensification, jahan par you are going to alter the crops, you are going to utilize different techniques in order to sowing the seeds of the rice, right? Apart from the direct seeded rice, so you will not be utilizing first that particular nursery and then going to sow that particular plant into the agricultural farm. But what you are doing, you are directly making sure the seeding of that particular rice crop. Now, crop diversification program, where you are going to diversify crops from the rice, like you are going to diversify your food basket or the variety of the things available in that. So that's how you are going to distribute the risk of methane emission. Now, talking about the PYQ, the climate change is a global problem. How India will be affected by the climate change, how Himalayan and the coastal states of India will be affected by climate change. So basically climate change के बारे में question है, but then in that particular case the chances are very high that it can be also incorporated in different sense, and it can be asked specifically about certain potent gases, right? Now, having discussed about the important articles in detail, let's also discuss about the quick updates. First in this is regarding the protected area permit. So the Nagaland Chief Minister has urged the Union Home Minister in order to review the reimposition of the protected area permit regime. Now, what is this particular protected area permit? So see, you might have already heard of the inner line permit, which is needed for the Indians who are going to certain specific area which are inhabited by certain community, जो कि let's say indigenous communities or the tribals, where you are restricting the unhindered entrance of the people. That's why for that the inner line permit has been created. But this is the protected area permit, where the special permit is required for the foreigners to enter in those particular regions. So it is for the foreign national to visit certain sensitive areas in India. Why? In order to prevent any specific disease, in order to prevent any losses to those particular community, right? So from where it is getting enforced, the Foreigners Protected Area Order of 1958 is giving power to government to designate any area as the protected area with the protected area permit. Now, the areas falling between the inner line and also the international border can be designated as the protected area. Now, the required for many states in UTs, including the Mizoram and Manipur, because of their demography and the tribal population. Now, who is the issuing authority? It is the Union Ministry of Home Affairs. That's why the Nagaland Chief Minister has urged the Union Home Minister. Next is regarding the World Urbanization Prospect Report. Now, this particular report has been released by UNDESA, which is the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Now, simple prelims question can be directly asked, like the World Urbanization Prospects Report 2025 was released by, there will be 4 options, prominent organization bhi denge, and then they will also give UNDESA. So you have to have an idea about that. Apart from that, this is giving you certain type of data with respect to urbanization. That also you can quote in order to give credibility to your answer. For example, cities are now home to roughly 45% of global population. Means in the context of urbanization, you can give the data that roughly 45% of the global population is residing in cities. Next, talking about the mega cities, jahan par there is population more than 10 million or 1 crore se zyada population hai. So that has quadrupled roughly 8 the 1975 mein, now it became 33. In India also there are many cities, but right now when we talk about the most popular cities, it is Jakarta in Indonesia, then after that it is Dhaka, Tokyo, and then New Delhi. So like this, obviously this data is not important, this one is not important, but you have to have an idea about this. If you have to talk about the urbanization and its negative consequences, you can quote this data and you can substantiate your argument. Talking about India, so India mein roughly 44% population is residing in the towns in India. And lastly, giving an idea regarding ki how there is a potential to increase further population in cities. So it is mentioned that roughly India, along with the 6 other cities, जहाँ पर ज़्यादा population move करेगा in the urban areas, that will add more than 500 million city resident between 25 to 50. So roughly in the next 50 years, there will be major increase, 500 million, right? So in that cases, it is very, very important data. Next is regarding the Goldilocks environment. So you might have heard already about the Goldilocks zones, right? So that is there with respect to the space. But now when we talk about the Goldilocks environment, it is talking about the sustainable growth or the stable growth, we can say. So Morgan Stanley in 2026 India Economic Outlook have projected कि India का growth रहेगा within the Goldilocks environment of the economy, and that will be with the real GDP growth of roughly 6.8%. Now, what is this particular Goldilocks environment and why it is important for economy? Because this is talking about that there will not be drastic growth in the economy. There will be the moderate growth that will be continuing, and that is a stable aspect for the growth, because it is not talking about that there will be the large amount of growth that will be leading to a unmanageable inflation. So it is going to ensure the sustainable growth or the stable growth along with that moderate level of inflation that will be there. So it is an ideal situation जहाँ पर steady growth होगा, neither too high कि trigger हो जाए inflation, nor too low for the slowdown. So it will be in the moderate manner, it is going to be there. So economy will not going to be expand too much, and that will cause the inflation, or will not shrink too much, that will cause the recession. That means stable policy, and for the policy maker also, this is good time in order to do certain or to do certain better decision making in order to reap the benefit of this. Next is regarding the water budgeting. As the name suggests, it is about managing whatever water resources are available, having an idea about that, right? So the Niti Aayog releases a report on the water budgeting for the aspirational blocks. Now, it is a comprehensive view of how much water is available from different sources, how it is utilized, where water shortage, where surplus, so in order to manage the water related things. So identify the demand supply gap, support the water security, integrated water resource management. So you can do the better management of water if you are aware regarding where the source is and where the deficit is. Now one of the key activities is the under the Atal Bhujal Yojana. So वहाँ पर you have to identify that which are the main reservoirs which we can utilize and how you can replenish also. So it is one of the key activities under the Atal Bhujal Yojana. Next is regarding the humpback dolphin. So it is one such variety of dolphin. So recently the study conducted in order to understand the behavioral mechanism of the wild dolphins, including the humpback dolphins and the traditional fishers and in the Ashtamudi Lake in Kerala, right? So first thing it is giving that Ashtamudi Lake, where it is situated, it is in Kerala, right? Now it is talking about the dolphin related distribution. So shallow or near water dolphins कहाँ पाई जाती हैं? It is there in Australia, Africa and Asia, right? Regarding the humpback dolphins. Now Indian Ocean humpback dolphins, it is endangered as per IUCN. Indo-Pacific humpback dolphin, it is vulnerable as per IUCN. Just having an idea is good to go. Next is when we talk about the river dolphin or the freshwater dolphins in India. So the Gangetic river dolphin, which is available in the entire Gangetic system. Okay, so from the Karnafuli river, Ganga river ka system, then Meghna river, Brahmaputra river, in entire region, this Gangetic river dolphins is available, and it is in the endangered category. When we talk about the Indus river dolphin, India, Pakistan, Bias river region, right? So in entire region, this particular Indus river dolphin is available. Again, the status is endangered in nature. That means it needs urgent attention in order to protect them. Next is regarding the Himalayan black bear, Urus tibetanus, right? So recently what had happened, that the experts are highlighting that recently when there is attack of this Himalayan black bear that have increased, the experts are highlighting that the rise of the temperature or the climate change is responsible for the change of behavioral aspect of the Himalayan black bear. So the Asiatic black bear or the moon bear, which is having the crescent shaped moon type mark or white mark on their black chest, that's why they are also sometimes known as the Asiatic black bear, or also sometimes known as the moon bear. Now they are largely nocturnal, they are solitary, want to live in the solitary regions, right? Along with that, occasional sightings during the day. That means generally they are nocturnal, but sometimes during the day also they are being found. 15 to 25 years is the lifespan. Gestation time is 200 to 240 days in order to grow in the gestation, right? Now talking about habitat, it is found in the heavily forested, broad-leaved and the coniferous forest region. So generally in the northern part of the country, right? IUCN के according it is vulnerable. As per the Wildlife Protection Act, it is in the Schedule 1, means highest protection has been awarded. Now, they are poached for their bile. The pitt ras hota hai, for that they are being poached because it is utilized conventionally in the Chinese medicine in order to produce certain type of medicines, and that's why they were being poached traditionally. Next is regarding transposon associated protein. So we have already discussed regarding CRISPR. So this is also a similar type of protein that is utilized as a molecular scissor, right? So it is similar to CRISPR Cas9, Cas12 a protein which is a molecular scissor की तरह काम करता है, and that it is comparatively more compact, so it is small in shape and size, right? And also easy for transfer. So viral transfer के लिए it is comparatively easy. So ICAR has recently patented the transposon associated protein based genome editing technology. So it is being patented now by ICAR. So transposon क्या होते हैं? It is also known as the jumping genes. So basically they are the DNA sequences जो कि move करते हैं themselves to the new position within the single cell के अंदर जो genome in that particular genome, they are moving, right? So simply you should be having an understanding that, like we have studied about the Cas9, similarly the transposon associated proteins are also doing the similar functions as a molecular scissor. Next is Kodaikanal Solar Observatory. So first thing is important, which is regarding the location of this particular observatory, right? So research, it is situated in the Tamil Nadu. Specifically, if we talk about the Palani Hills of the southern India, right? And specifically in the Tamil Nadu region. So researcher from the ARIES, which is Aryabhatta Research Institute of Observational Science, tapped the century-old data from the Kodaikanal Solar Observatory to reconstruct the sun's past polar magnetic behavior, right? So how sun was magnetically behaving, and that's why this particular observatory provided a very important type of data. It was established in 1899, one of the oldest observatory in India, right? Now it is being operated by Indian Institute of Astrophysics, which is the autonomous institute under the Department of Science and Technology. Now talking about the type of telescope, generally देखो बहुत कम chances है UPSC will ask specific about that, but just have an idea regarding white light active region monitor, H alpha and twin telescope, just एक idea के लिए, right? Now it is also known for discovery of the Evershed effect in 1909. What is this Evershed effect? So when observed in the sun's penumbra during the time of eclipse, there were certain sunspots which were available. From that there were outward flowing of the material that was seen through this particular telescopes, and that's why it came in news. So Evershed effect was being observed through the Kodaikanal Solar Observatory. That's why there. So Evershed effect could be asked, or Kodaikanal Solar Observatory. A general idea you should be having. Next is regarding the Indira Gandhi Peace Prize. So it is basically provided for the peace, disarmament and development, and this is awarded annual basis pay, right? So ex-president of Chile, Michelle Bachelet, have been provided or conferred with the Indira Gandhi Peace Prize of 2024. Now, obviously, it is being provided by the Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust, not by the government, right? The person, organization, without any distinction of nationality, race, religion, मतलब किसी को भी मिल सकता है. Any nationality is eligible. Recognition of their creative efforts towards promoting racial equality, goodwill and harmony among the nation. That means those who have done good for the nation or entire humanity, that can be awarded with this particular award, Indira Gandhi Prize, right? So with this, we have done the entire discussion of the news today of 20th of November. Now there must be certain questions. Try to answer that. Go to the Vision IAS Digital Current Affairs portal in order to access further features. So whatever we have discussed, I hope those things are clear to you. Thank you everyone. We'll meet again.